The late summer sun cast long shadows across our perfectly manicured lawn. I stood in my designer kitchen, watching the caterers arrange elaborate appetizers on silver platters. Everything had to be perfect for tonight's party. Michael, my husband of 5 years, was hosting his annual reunion with his college friends. I smoothed down my navy silk dress, a recent splurge from Nordstrom that hugged my curves in all the right places. "Sarah, honey, they're here," Michael called from the foyer. I took a deep breath, plastered on my best hostess smile, and walked toward the sound of male laughter. That's when I first saw them, the Wall Street Trio, as they called themselves. James Cooper stood in the center, tall and commanding in his tailored suit. His dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my skin tingle. Ryan Matthews lounged against the doorframe, his casual stance belying the sharp intelligence in his gaze. And Derek Wilson, the most aggressive of the three, made no attempt to hide his appreciative stare. "Sarah, you remember the guys from last year's Christmas party?" Michael said, his arm wrapping around my waist. I nodded, trying to ignore the way James's eyes followed my every movement. "Of course. Welcome back, everyone." The evening started innocently enough. Guests filtered in, filling our home with the pleasant buzz of conversation and clinking glasses. I played the perfect hostess, making sure everyone's wine glass stayed full. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I turned around, one of the trio was there. James cornered me in the kitchen as I was getting more ice. "You seem different this year, Sarah," he murmured, standing close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "More confident." I laughed nervously, clutching the ice bucket like a shield. "I'm the same as always." His smile held secrets. "We've noticed you, you know. All of us have." Before I could respond, Michael appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay in here?" James stepped back smoothly. "Just catching up with your lovely wife." The party continued, but something had shifted. I found myself hyper-aware of their presence. Ryan's hand brushing against mine as he took a drink. Derek's meaningful glances across the room. James's subtle but constant attention. It was flattering, I had to admit. When was the last time Michael had looked at me that way? He was always so busy at the hospital, saving children's lives. Noble work, but it left me alone more often than not. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. "You looked beautiful last night." James. I should have deleted it. I should have blocked the number. Instead, I found myself smiling. The texts became regular. James at first, then Ryan and Derek joined in. They were careful, never crossing any obvious lines. Just enough to keep me intrigued. Michael didn't notice. He was pulling double shift. S at the hospital again. I told myself it was harmless. Just attention from successful, attractive men. What woman wouldn't enjoy that? Then came the invitation. "Drinks at the Velvet Room tonight?" Just us. I stared at my phone for a long time. "I'm married," I typed back. "It's just drinks. Michael trusts us." That was true. They were his oldest friends. I told Michael I was meeting Rachel for girls' night. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The Velvet Room was exactly the kind of upscale bar you'd expect Wall Street types to frequent. James was waiting outside, looking devastating in a charcoal suit. "You came," he smiled, offering his arm. Ryan and Derek were already inside, at a private booth in the back. The champagne was already flowing. To new adventures, James toasted, his eyes never leaving mine. One drink became 2, then 3. Their attention was intoxicating. The way they hung on my every word. The subtle touches. The loaded glances. I felt desired, appreciated, alive. It was past midnight when James called me a car. "This was fun," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's just the beginning," he promised. That night marked a turning point. The texts became more frequent, more daring. Secret meetings multiplied. Lunch with James at hidden cafes. Drinks with Ryan after work. Private art showings with Derek. I became an expert at lying. Late meetings, yoga classes, shopping with Rachel. Michael believed it all. Why wouldn't he? I was Sarah Mitchell, perfect wife, successful marketing executive. I didn't have affairs. Except I did. It started with James, in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. "I've wanted this since I first saw you," he whispered against my skin. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt powerful. Ryan followed a week later. Then Derek. They passed me between them like a precious gift. Each one offering something different. James's commanding presence. Ryan's gentle seduction. Derek's raw passion. I was drowning in their attention, and I didn't want to be saved. But the guilt started creeping in. Little moments when I'd catch Michael's trusting smile. The way he still looked at me with pure love. The wedding ring that felt heavier each day. "You're overthinking," James would say, pulling me close. "We're all consenting adults here." The lies got bigger. Weekend business trips that were really spent in luxury hotels. Girls' nights that were actually wild parties in their penthouses. I started keeping a separate phone. Different credit cards. I was living a double life, and I was good at it. Too good. Rachel noticed the changes first. "You seem different," she said over coffee one morning. Distracted. "Is everything okay with Michael?" I brushed off her concerns. Just busy with work. But she knew me too well. "Sarah, you're my best friend. You can tell me anything." I almost broke down then. Almost confessed everything. I lied to her too. The trio became more demanding. More controlling. James would get angry if I couldn't meet him when he wanted. Ryan started showing up at my office unannounced. Derek sent threatening messages when I tried to pull back. I was in too deep, and I knew it. But I couldn't stop. The thrill was too addictive. The danger too exciting. Then came the night that changed everything. Michael was supposed to be working late. The trio was at my house. Music playing. Wine flowing. Clothes scattered across the floor. We didn't hear the front door open. Didn't hear the footsteps. But we all heard Michael's voice. "Sarah?" The world stopped. Time froze. I saw my perfect life shatter in his eyes. The look of betrayal, of heartbreak, of disgust. "Get out," he whispered. The trio dressed quickly, silently. No one looked at anyone else. They left through the back door, leaving me alone with the ruins of my marriage. "How long?" Michael asked, his voice hollow. I couldn't lie anymore. "Months." "With all of them?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "They're my best friends, Sarah." "I know." "Was anything real?" I reached for him, but he stepped back. "Don't." He left that night. Packed a bag and went to stay with his brother. I sat in our empty house, surrounded by evidence of my betrayal. Wine glasses, scattered cushions, the lingering scent of cologne. My phone buzzed with messages from the trio. I ignored them all. The next day, Michael's lawyer called. He wanted a divorce. No reconciliation. No second chances. I'd destroyed everything. My perfect life was over. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst was yet to come. The trio didn't take my silence well. James started showing up at my office unannounced. "We need to talk," he'd demand, causing my coworkers to whisper. Ryan sent endless messages, alternating between sweet promises and veiled threats. Derek was the worst, his obsession turning dangerous. "You can't just walk away from us," he growled during one confrontation. My professional life began to crumble. Rumors spread through the office like wildfire. The marketing director called me into her office one morning. "Sarah, your personal life is affecting your work performance." I stared at my hands, shame burning my cheeks. "Take some time off," she suggested firmly. It wasn't really a suggestion. Rachel tried to reach out. "Let me help you," she pleaded over the phone. But I pushed her away, too ashamed to face her. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Michael's lawyer was merciless. Mrs. Mitchell engaged in multiple affairs with her husband's closest friends. The words echoed through the conference room. I couldn't deny any of it. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, credit card statements, hotel receipts. My lawyer advised me to settle quickly. "You won't win this, Sarah." I gave Michael everything he wanted. The house, the cars, most of our savings. I moved into a small apartment downtown. The trio's harassment intensified. James started sending flowers to my new address. "We can start fresh," the cards would read. Ryan would wait outside my building. "Just talk to me, Sarah. We had something special." Derek's behavior became increasingly erratic. Late-night phone calls, angry messages, threats to expose more details about our affair. I changed my phone number, installed security cameras, started varying my routes to work. But they always found me. One night, I came home to find all three waiting in my lobby. "This has to stop," James said, his voice dangerously calm. "You belong with us." I tried to push past them. Derek grabbed my arm. "We're not finished." That's when something in me snapped. "Yes, we are." I screamed, not caring who heard. "You've ruined my life. All of you." Security came running. The trio retreated, but their parting looks promised this wasn't over. I collapsed in my apartment, shaking. For the first time, I saw them clearly. Not as exciting lovers, but as predators. They had targeted me, manipulated me, used me to destroy my marriage. And I had let them. The next day, I called Rachel. "I need help," I sobbed into the phone. She came immediately. No questions. No judgment. Just open arms and understanding. "I know a good therapist," she said softly. Dr. Cameron's office became my sanctuary. Twice a week, I unraveled my story. "Why do you think you were vulnerable to their attention?" she asked. I had to dig deep for that answer. I felt invisible, I admitted. Michael was always working. And the trio made you feel seen? They made me feel everything. Therapy was painful. exposing, necessary. I learned about boundaries, self-worth, the difference between attention and respect. The trio's harassment continued. But I was stronger now. I filed police reports, got restraining orders, documented everything. My lawyer helped me build a case. If they violate the orders, they'll face serious consequences. Their Wall Street reputations were at stake. Finally, something they cared about more than tormenting me. The harassment slowly decreased. James stopped sending flowers. Ryan's messages became less frequent. Derek's threats faded away. But the damage to my life remained. My career was in shambles. My marriage was over. My reputation destroyed. Rock bottom, Dr. Cameron called it. Now we rebuild. Rachel stood by me through everything. Coffee dates, movie nights, long talks about nothing and everything. The Sarah I know is still in there, she'd say. I started to believe her. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I took a job at a smaller firm. Started over from the bottom. Found an apartment in a secure building. Created new routines. New habits. New boundaries. The nightmares became less frequent. The panic attacks subsided. I learned to trust myself again. One day, I ran into Michael at our old favorite coffee shop. My heart stopped when I saw him. He looked good. Healthy. Happy. He was with someone. A pretty doctor from his hospital, I learned later. Our eyes met across the room. He nodded politely. I nodded back. That small gesture meant everything. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Acceptance that we had both moved on. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter. The past was finally starting to feel like the past. That night, I deleted the last traces of the trio from my phone. Old messages I'd saved as evidence. Photos I couldn't bear to look at. Email threads I'd kept out of fear. It was time to let go. Dr. Cameron approved. That's a significant step, Sarah. Rachel celebrated with me. To new beginnings, she toasted. I was ready for whatever came next. But the universe wasn't finished with me yet. Not by a long shot. The healing process was like learning to walk again. Each step careful, deliberate, and sometimes painful. I threw myself into therapy with Dr. Cameron. Tell me about your childhood, she prompted one session. We explored my need for validation. My fear of being alone. The way I used others' attention to feel worthy. You're doing the work, she'd say encouragingly. But some days were harder than others. I'd wake up in cold sweats. Dreaming of James's controlling smile. Ryan's manipulative words. Derek's threatening presence. Rachel suggested I try something new. You used to love photography in college, she reminded me. I dug out my old camera from storage. The familiar weight felt right in my hands. I started small. City streets at dawn. Coffee shop patrons. Central Park in autumn. Each photo helped me see the world differently. Through my lens, beauty existed everywhere. Even in broken things. Even in me. Work was getting better too. My new firm appreciated my dedication. My fresh perspective. My resilience. I was rebuilding my professional reputation. One project at a time. Then came the invitation. A gallery opening downtown. You should come, my coworker insisted. Great networking opportunity. I almost declined. Social events still made me nervous. But Dr. Cameron encouraged me. You can't hide forever, Sarah. The gallery was crowded. Elegant. Intimidating. I clutched my wine glass like a shield. That's when I saw him. Not Michael. Not any of the trio. Just a man. Studying a photograph with genuine interest. He caught me watching him. Smiled. No hidden agenda. No predatory gleam. Just warmth. Beautiful composition, he said, nodding at the photo. The light and shadow. We talked about art. Photography. Life. His name was David. He taught art history at Columbia. He didn't try to get my number. Didn't push for more than conversation. It was refreshing. The next day, I told Dr. Cameron about him. How did it feel to connect with someone new? Scary, I admitted. But nice. She smiled knowingly. That's progress. Weeks passed. I focused on my photography, my healing, my growth. Then I saw David again. At a coffee shop near Central Park. The photographer, he smiled. We shared a table. Talked for hours. He asked for my number this time. I hesitated only briefly before giving it. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy. No pressure. Just good food and conversation. I told him about my divorce. Not everything. But enough. He listened without judgment. Shared his own story of heartbreak and healing. We're all works in progress, he said. Months passed. David and I took things slow. Very slow. He never pushed. Never demanded. Never made me feel unsafe. Rachel approved. He's different, she observed. You're different with him. Then came the news that shook my world again. James Cooper had been arrested. Securities fraud. Inside trading. His fall from Wall Street grace was spectacular. Ryan and Derek were implicated too. Their carefully constructed world crumbling. I watched the news with mixed emotions. Relief. Vindication. A touch of pity. How do you feel about it? Dr. Cameron asked. Free, I realized. Finally free. David held my hand through the media storm. The trio's scandal brought up old gossip. My name appeared in some articles. Their former mistress. But it didn't break me this time. I was stronger now. More whole. 1 year after the gallery opening, David and I moved in together. A bright apartment with good light for photography. My work was gaining recognition. Small shows at first. Then bigger ones. People connected with my images. The beauty I found in broken places. The hope in new beginnings. Michael sent me an email. Short. Kind. He was getting married. I hope you're finding happiness, Sarah. I cried when I read it. Not from pain. But from closure. David held me that night. You okay? I nodded, truly meaning it. I am now. My photography series Redemption opened at a prestigious gallery. Images of healing. Growth. Rebirth. David stood proudly beside me. Rachel brought champagne. Even my parents came. "We're so proud of you," Mom whispered. "The final photo in the series. A self-portrait. Not broken. Not perfect. Just authentically me." Dr. Cameron came to the opening. "You've done the work," she said. "Now you're helping others heal through your art." Later that night, David and I walked through Central Park. The same park where I once met the trio in secret. But it felt different now. Cleansed. Renewed. Under a sky full of stars. David got down on one knee. No grand gestures. No manipulative words. Just pure love. "Will you marry me, Sarah?" I looked at this man, who had helped me believe in love again, who had shown me what respect truly meant, who had never once made me feel less than whole. "Why?" "Yes," I whispered. And this time, I knew it was right. End.